that these are known human carcinogens. And with the other 185, what the kind of scary thing is we're starting to see some data that would make us believe that these are going to be in the future, in the very near future, within 10 years, are going to be classed as known human carcinogens. So you total those two lists up there, you've got 230 some or 240 items that are human carcinogens, and some of it they find out by doing animal studies after the fact, after they've discovered cancer. Then they take what they've gathered from the data to seeing as was the common possible carcinogen. They do some testing on it and see, and of course they don't do human trials, but they gather data then from groups of people and wherever they lived, things that happened around them, or perhaps what their occupation was, what the commonalities were. So that was my main thing that I looked at. The other thing I looked at was an article in the New England Journal of Medicine, which I will also have the reference for. So Dr. David Christiani, he talks about combating the environmental causes of cancer. And some of the things that he said in there are quite shocking. I'm just going to read a couple for you, just sort of set the stage as I discuss these other things. So despite the decreases in the incidence of some cancers and associated mortality, cancer remains highly lethal and very common. About 41% of Americans will develop some form of cancer, including non-melanoma skin cancer, in their lifetime. 1/5 of Americans will die from cancer during the past 3 decades. Die from cancer. During the past 3 decades, increases in the incidence of some childhood cancers, such as leukemia and brain tumors, may implicate prenatal exposure to environmental carcinogens, and more than 300 industrial chemicals have been detected in umbilical cord blood. So that was kind of shocking, especially when we were discussing in the class the other day about that childhood cancers are not environmentally caused, that there's other things that at play there. But based on this information supplied here in this article, with more than 300 industrial chemicals having been detected in umbilical cord blood, one would have to wonder if environmental exposure, even for the childhood cancers, isn't a reality. So epidemiologists, I'm just going to go on with some other points here that he makes in this article. Epidemiologists are long known for most cancers. Environmental factors have high attributable risks, as high as 85 to 95% in Western populations, even when specific carcinogenic agent or agents in a particular exposure are unclear. So they might not necessarily know what it is, but they know that it is environmental. Of the 80,000 chemicals or products in the United States market, many of which are imported, only 200 have been adequately tested for carcinogenicity. And of course, as I pointed out before, they don't look at things until there's a problem. They don't start to scrutinize and see. And he says also in his article here, since most cancers are long latency diseases, waiting for population-based evidence of a problem allows avoidable cancer epidemics to occur. So we go with something that's perhaps been engineered for a good thing, some chemical that's going to make our life easier, make our food last longer, make the things that we manufacture not break down in the sun or whatever, or rot from exposure to moisture. But that's fine for those inanimate objects, but for us humans, the consequences are dire. So obviously I'm not going to go through all of those known human carcinogens. The list is fairly long, but I'm just going to cover a couple here just so that you can see how common some of these are. So some of them you'll probably be familiar with, and there'll be a few that you're not. So alpha toxins. I looked at this one here because it's a worldwide thing that happens. So this is something that's not man-made. This is a naturally occurring carcinogen that happens as a result of fungus growing in food crops. So grain crops, cereal crops around the world, depends on sort of weather and that. They tend to see that alpha toxins are higher during dry periods. So if you've had sort of a drought year, so these fungi grow in there and they release these alpha toxins, which then are in the grain and then is processed into food and ingested by humans. And it's also interestingly passed through animal products that came from animals that were fed the grain that had alpha toxins in it. And that would include meat, eggs, and milk. So it's primarily ingested by contaminated food, either directly or indirectly, and it causes liver cancer. So they know this, right? And the thing about it is there's no testing that goes on for alpha toxins unless they see something abnormal with the way that the grain appears. You're being exposed to small amounts probably all the time. And that's just an example of how there's some things that are so out of our control, it doesn't matter how much we think we can micromanage. You know, you're going to die from something, and it might be liver cancer from ingesting alpha toxins. But that's naturally occurring, and you know the amounts of that are relatively small, and it's basically out of your control unless you know, I think even with organic grains, unless they actually do a test on each field for alpha toxins, they will not know if they're present or not. So let me look at alcoholic beverage consumption. So those are things that are ingested, I guess. I should have covered that first. I've got the three categories there: ingestion, inhalation, and transdermal absorption. So the interesting thing about alcohol is it's a modifiable risk factor, right? So the consumption of alcoholic beverages has been shown to cause cancer in the mouth, pharynx, larynx, and esophagus, right? And of course, the more you drink, the more your risk for cancer is. So the cancers with that, I mean, are actually worse if you're also a smoker, for whatever reason. If the fact that you smoke and drink together, those cancers of the mouth, pharynx, larynx, and esophagus are actually more common. So you have the initial carcinogen, precious secondary carcinogen, and something that's also making it the environment easier for the cancer cells to grow. And then another one that you'll probably come to by ingestion, and this one was kind of shocking for me as well, is arsenic and arsenic compounds. So yes, it's used as a wood preservative. I was just putting up a deck this weekend there, and I seen on the little tags there about arsenic and just a safety precautions for that. It's also used in electronic components and as a livestock feed additive. It's used in livestock feed additive for antimicrobial, so very small amounts. The highest levels of all arsenic in all forms are detected in seafood, rice, rice cereal, mushrooms, and poultry. Okay, so the one thing about the being fed to the animals and that, if you look at the differences between beef, pork, and chicken, chicken actually has the highest affinity for arsenic to remain in the meat. And so consumption of meat from chickens fed the food that has the arsenic in it. The arsenic, when you when you eat the chicken there, you're actually exposing yourself to higher levels of it if the feed that they were fed had arsenic in it. So, I mean, I can understand now in looking at this environmental exposures and risk factors for cancer, why some individuals who are organic are so adamant about things, because honestly I was unaware until I started to do this research. So you think you're doing a good thing, you're eating the chicken breast, the skinless chicken breast, because it's healthy for you, but if it's been fed animal feed that contains arsenic as an antimicrobial, it has a higher affinity for it. There's going to be more residue of arsenic in that chicken breast. You're going to be consuming it, and it's known human carcinogen. Okay. Other ways that you would be exposed to this besides eating the chicken is consumption of drinking water that's contaminated with arsenic pesticides, natural mineral deposits, or arsenical chemicals that were disposed of improperly. This goes to because any of these chemical compounds like this, when they're put together in large concentrations, if they're exposed to our waterways, or if the containers that contain them aren't disposed of properly, you can have contamination of the environment and inadvertent ingestion then. So the cancer that would occur from arsenic is usually found in the skin, lung, digestive tract, liver, urinary bladder, kidney, and lymphatic and hematopoietic systems. So many different parts of the body. Alright, so we're going to move on down to inhalation. Okay, so here's where the mind map starts getting a little busy. I have arrows that go between things that basically show that they're in more than one category. So we'll see when we get down there. So asbestos, that's one that we're kind of familiar with. We heard a lot about because it was discovered to be carcinogenic.